You are listening to the Wholesome Way podcast, hosted by Alexander Lobb. Please keep in mind, everything shared in this podcast is for inspiration only and shouldn't be taken as medical or professional health advice. If you're making changes to your health routines or lifestyle, please check in with our qualified health professional first. This episode will begin in 30 to 60 seconds. During that time, you're going to hear a few words from two of our very generous sponsors of the show with some pretty awesome offers. So listen to this. And now, on with the episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Wholesome Way podcast, where we try to find the middle path through life, a path of more balance, more purpose, and how we actually do that. And today I have a guest, Lauren Apple, who is an alignment strategist for CEO parents and the founder of Profit and Presence Co. She helps founders stop running someone else's playbook, spotting the pattern that's quietly running them, then rebuilding the business around the life they actually have. And she's a mum of 5 who closes her laptop at 4 p.m. Very proud of that. And most days as proof the work works. So yeah, fantastic to have you on the podcast, Lauren. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Alexander. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. And Lauren is calling from South Carolina. And obviously I'm in Sydney, Australia. And I'm always so grateful that we can have these conversations from, across the other side of the world, and we have a time that we can actually meet. So how good's that?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Fantastic. And I understand you've got your own podcast, Profit and Presence, which is your company, right? It's you do all your talks, your coaching through the CEO mumpreneurs, which I love that word. That's really cool. And we were just talking earlier about, how that conundrum that people are in, they don't want to give too much time to their business, that it's at the expense of their family. So I'm very much looking forward to getting stuck into that with you. And I know that a lot of listeners are actually, thinking about that, especially my age, 29, 30, start thinking about kids and family and how am I going to build my wealth? And all these people are building businesses so quickly and I'm feeling so far behind. Did you ever feel like you're at that point, Lauren?
Far behind?
Yeah,
constantly, right? I think we all do. I think that's our human nature to just think that we are in a different place than we should be and want to be other places quicker. So yeah, I constantly have to reframe what that looks like in my mind and recognize that I'm exactly where I need to be. And I just got to keep taking one step forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So a bit of your background, Lauren. So take us back to when this all sort of started, when, you talked a lot about rejecting this idea of hustle culture. And there has been a theme of that, in recent years.
Yeah.
People really hustling and in their early years and potentially compromising on things that they, actually find valuable and important to their own life. You help with, CEO parents who are feeling trapped by their own success, I should say. You used to be a pastor for 10 years as well. So, take us back to the start. What really set you down this path that, hey, there must be a better way to be successful that actually feels aligned and true to myself.
Yeah, I think the stake in the ground moment for me was a Thursday night. We had mac and cheese with hot dogs for dinner. I don't know if you guys eat that in Australia ever, but it was one of those things that's easy that my kids don't complain about and happened way more regularly than it needed to be. And I got a call from a client and I stood up to go to the other room to answer that client call during dinner time. And when it was done, it wasn't even an emergency, right? But I still left the dinner table to do it. When it was done, I was on my way back and I heard my 10-year-old daughter look at my husband and say, "Why is mom always working?" And it was like all the air left my lungs in that moment because I built my business in the midst of my husband being in retail management, having 3 littles at home for the whole reason to do something, right? Provide an impact, but also to be like the mom that I wanted to be. to show up and to be available for my kids and to have that flexibility and that freedom. And here I was from the outside doing all the right things and reaching success. I had hit multiple six figures. All the goals that I had set for my business had been happening, but I was sacrificing it at the cost of the life and the presence and the relationships that I wanted. And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, something has to change. Either I need to burn it all down and go get a real job, right? You know, we say real job in quotations, or I need to find a better way to do it. And so I went out on this journey to kind of figure that out and figure out how can I run my business in my life where it's easier and not harder.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think where we struggle sometimes is like the balance, like the tipping point, like where is that? And like how long did it take you to find that, that balance? And you actually knew, hey, yeah, this is actually working now,
Yeah. I hesitate to use the word balance because I do think there's never really a perfect balance. We're constantly in states of rhythms and evolvement. I think in every stage of our life, there is opportunity and flexibility and things that shift and change and need to shift and change. But I think when you start to recognize the overall feeling of how you're showing up, not just in business, but like in life, is when you start to recognize, okay, I'm doing this, right? And for me, it's always been this word ease. I've always wanted to show up in my life with ease. I didn't want it to feel hard or like I had to force it to make it work, but I wanted to be the mom that I wanted to be with ease. I wanted to be the leader that I wanted to be with ease. I wanted to make the impact with ease on my clients and not feel like I was always exhausted. And so when I started to go on this path and figure out these things, I had a lot of bad experiences, a lot of failures, what people would call, but those failures gave me data, right? Like drain is data. Like it tells me when things aren't working. And so when I was feeling at ease, when I had peace, I was recognizing, okay, things are starting to click. Things are happening here. And I could continue to go on that journey to find that and find where the discomfort lived, find where the chaos lives, and continue to attack each part of my life and business in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like an experiment. And I think that's been a
Yeah.
common theme on the podcast is like trying to experiment. And especially like in your 20s, you should give yourself the permission to, um, you know, to actually experiment and try things and yeah. And as you said, collect the data, right? Because we can't know everything. We can't possibly know everything. So
Yeah, and I
that's,
think everybody's experimenting. Like we have this misnomer that like it looks like they have it together and they know what they're doing, but life is just a lot of experiments, right? And we figure it out. And
yeah.
things what worked at one point doesn't always work forever, right? And so we're always in this testing ground. That's what I always try to tell my clients is like you need to set up an intentional test. It needs to have boundaries, it needs to have deadlines, it needs to have a time frame and success metrics to know if it's working. You don't continue it forever, but we always should be testing things so that we can determine, have real data to know if it's something that we want to continue or something that we need to just let go of.
Absolutely. And one of your videos that I was watching, because you got your YouTube channel as well, Profit and Presence, that really struck a chord with me was the power of saying no. I really
Mhm.
liked that episode, and I think that is a huge roadblock, in inverted commas, on finding, you know, in this context, finding a wholesome way, finding that path that's purposeful, that's balanced, that's labeled with your own success and what that means for you. And I think, especially me, I've worked on this a lot because, as you mentioned, a lot of us are raised to be helpful. And I like that
Yeah.
comment because it's true. It really is.
Yep.
Like we are raised to be, and there's nothing inherently bad about that, I think, like objectively. Like it's nice to be, we are put on this earth to contribute to a community because that's how we evolve and that's how we develop as human beings. So I think it's important to recognize that this is not a bad thing. But the way that we express it, the way that we channel our helpfulness or our support for other people, and saying yes to things, that's where we kind of draw the line. So, yeah, tell us a bit about like how you approached saying no in the context of building your career, but also like building your health as well at the same time, like building a life that feels aligned to you, and that where all the data is making sense and you're feeling happy and actually fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times when we say no, we think that you say no to bad things. And I really had to shift my perspective on I could be saying no to really good things, really good intentioned people, really great opportunities. But no doesn't mean no forever. It could just simply mean not right now, right? Sometimes it means no forever, but sometimes it just means not right now. And maybe in a season later on, it's going to take my experience and my advice. You know, I have a friend of mine who does financial coaching, and he was telling me that I always tell my clients, like, is it worth it for you to invest this money to continue to pay this person that's not working out great for you, or to continue to do this program that you're a part of that maybe isn't giving you the return that you want out of it at the cost of your family? You know, and I think that that shift in the way that we spend our resources, our time, because we can give, right? We give in finances, we give in our resources, we give in our time, we give in our energy. So saying no could be in any of those areas, right? But we have to recognize, like, when we say no to things, we're actually saying yes to other things, right? And so if I say no to this opportunity, I'm saying yes to being at my kids' soccer games. When I say no to this opportunity, I'm saying yes to be the neighbor or the small group leader to my friends and be able to show up for them when I need to. Because if I say yes to everything else, I'm going to have to say no unintentioned. So I really try to guard my yeses, which informs my nos. And I know that's kind of a backwards way to look around it, but like having non-negotiables in place to recognize, like, these are the things that I need to say yes to. They're important to me right now in this season. It could change in 90 days, right? But right now in this season, these are the things I say yes to. Because I'm saying yes to this, it means these other things I have to say no to. And a lot of times we learn that by saying yes to things when we should have said no. And we recognize it afterwards, right? We sacrifice something that wasn't worth it, or we show up not the best version of ourselves, or we're exhausted, or we're resentful about that opportunity or that time invested. And so looking back at that gives us the clarification to go, okay, in the future, I need to say no to this, you know. And it's taking those failures or those opportunities that we should have gone a different direction and making sure that that's now built into the data for our operating system that we create and how we show up.
How much data do you need to be able to know, in the context of business, like business building your wealth? Like, how much data do we need, you know, in terms of years, I don't know, number of times we say yes or no, to know that, like, what the right opportunities are to say yes to, you know, like, because I imagine there's going to be a point where, you know, you might have experienced this, where there's something really important that you need to go to that you know will be important for your business building activities. For example, like a seminar, or like maybe you've got to catch a flight there or something. But it's like your daughter's like 16th birthday, and you see this like fork in the road. How do you make those sort of decisions? Like, do you actually compromise on like your family sometimes? And how often is it okay to do that, in your experience?
Yeah, I don't think there's one right way for anybody. You know, it really is what you set out to do and what's important to you. I have in the past compromised on that stuff, and I've regretted it. And I think that is where I really have learned these things. And so there's not like a level of times or opportunities or moments that like builds out that data, but it's more like, okay, I tried it. I gave it a shot. Was it worth it? And was it not? You know, sometimes there's opportunities to have hybrid things, right? Where it's not one at the cost of the other. Like I can bring a kid along with me on a business trip and add a day on the tail end, you know, and be able to make it a special trip for them. They're traveling with their mom. They get to go on the plane. They get to, you know, experience these new things, but I also get the opportunity that I needed to, you know, to show up and speak. I've done that before. You know, so just recognizing some of those things, being willing to like be flexible and not so like stuck in one or the other, that there is choices that can combine the two. But also just learning from your mistakes. I think as a parent, you know, for parents listening, we all know that we're never going to be perfect, right? And it's how we show up in our mistakes and owning it and saying to our kids, oh, I'm sorry I did this. I'm not going to do it again. right? And living that out in the future. So now I don't take opportunities around my kids' birthdays or, things like that. I try not to miss any of my son's soccer games on his schedule as much as possible. And so it's just building that in because I know the season and the times now to be able to buffer that and guard that.
Yeah, awesome. So you kind of set up the framework already, and it
Yep.
works, and where you can compromise. Yeah, it's amazing. So tell me a bit about profit and presence. Let's dig into a little bit about that, the meaning behind it. I know your kind of like tagline is that presence isn't something that you earn once the inbox is empty. You build your way there. Can you expand on that? What does that really mean? How do your clients benefit from it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is kind of like that phrase, can you have your cake and eat it too? A lot of times we think that you can only have one or the other. You can have a successful, growing, generating revenue business, or you can be the stay-at-home parent or the sister or the brother or the son or the daughter of your parents that need you in that moment, right? Or the great friend. But really, it's recognizing that you don't have to sacrifice one for the other, that if you make intentioned choices and steps and get really clear on what you want on both sides, you can have both. And that's kind of what I've built up in here. Now, maybe I can't have the same numbers of revenue as if I were to hustle all the time and burn out and work all the weekends and never be around for my family, but I could still have success that's enough for me, right? And I think sometimes we just put oh, I want to reach $2 billion or, $1 million here in revenue. And we don't even know what that means. It's just a random number. But if you were to actually do the work to figure out what you wanted your life to look like what vacations you wanted to include or the lifestyle additives that you wanted on there, the team that you needed to have to run that, you'd find out your numbers could be a lot less. And that's part of it. It's the intention behind, right? So if we have an intention behind the choices and the goals and the decisions we make in our business for the lifestyle output, it helps us make the right choices, right? And to build it the right way. Where most of us are just, oh, I want to build my business and I'm really excited about it and I have this goal in my mind. And so I'm just going to listen to what people tell me as advice. And that advice doesn't always, actually, I found most of the time leads you away from where you want your life to be unless you're really intentioned about it and you're really clear on what you want that to look like. Not because we mean to, but because we chase the success in business and we aren't clear on what success in life looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And when you say, I love what you said about being intentional about it. What do you mean by that? What does that actually look like tangibly? Because I talk a lot about vision boards. I create a mind movie, which is a video version of a vision board. But what does that look like for you in terms of being intentional? Do you set how do you set goals? Do you think that the way people are setting them is the right way? Yeah, how do you approach that?
Yeah. I don't think there's a one size fits all. My number one base thing is actually a alignment to figure out your wiring. All of our goals, all of our business systems, all of our structures should be based off of who we are uniquely created to be, where we get energy, what our sweet spot is, how we show up best. Having a piece of paper for me to put text on is draining. I will avoid it at all costs. I'm a oral resonator, right? I like to talk out things out loud and process things out loud. So even just shifting the way that I goal vision by talking it out loud and having prompts and getting a transcript from that has changed everything for me, right? And some people are visual, like you said, you have the mind map or you want to create a vision board or different things like that. All of that needs to be based off of who you are, not what somebody else tells you to do. And so recognizing, becoming more and more aware of who you are, how you're created, how you show up, what you don't want to be doing because it drains you, and what you do want to be doing actually helps you show up easier because you're showing up in your natural tendencies instead of having to fight them, And so base level, I tell everybody to take a bunch of assessments. It's a bunch of business and personality assessments. Get really clear on those. And then also audit your current reality. Yes, you have an ideal week that we put in our calendar, right? Or we say this is how much we want to work. But if you were to actually look at your last week, how did you actually spend time? Was there a lot of moments where it was hard for you to focus, where you felt exhausted or drained, or it took way longer than it should have for you to complete this task? all of that is information to find out if you're showing up as your best self, if you're showing up the way that you should. When I discovered there's people in my life that I could hand things off to, that they loved to organize Google Drives and documents, like that was like life changing for me, because I finish like quick start is number 9 on the Colby for me. So it's really easy for me to start things, but pulling it through to the finish line, all that tenacity from Working Genius is like my biggest frustration. And so I will avoid it at all costs. And it will take me hours upon hours just of mental thinking about it because I don't want to do it. Right. And I free up so much time in my life when I create that. And so our goals need to align with that, right? Where in our life do we need to outsource things that don't fit us? I am not the domestic cleaner of my house. So being able to pay for a housekeeper, life-changing, right? Making my kids do chores every single day, life-changing, right? So recognizing those things for me, for my clients, being aware of the things that give you ease or the things that like make things chaotic for you or harder for you is really where I would start.
Yeah, awesome. Delegation. That's the key. Yeah. I think, a lot of people that, including myself, it's something that I work on is being able to, delegate tasks and not have this control over everything. I think a lot of people think that they need to be in control of, a business that they're creating, for example. I think there's a point where you have to be, you have to protect your IP, you have to protect the way that you serve your customers. But I think, you're right. There is a point where you have to say, I am not this type of person. This is not where my energy is best spent. And therefore actually spending time, doing chores or organizing Google Drives or, preparing invoices is just like draining my energy away from, my competitive advantage, which is, as you said, speaking to people, creating transformation, creating a space for people to transform. As a coach. So and I totally agree with that. And I think what's in terms of being able to delegate that, what is the best way to what led you to be able to do that, to recognize that, or was it just something natural that happened to you? Like you just know, okay, I'm not that type of person. I'm just going to delegate that task. Like what do
I
people
don't
have
think
to
it
sort
was
of go through, like
natural.
mindset?
Yeah, I think like I followed a lot of the advice at the beginning and I started to delegate actually too soon. And I think a lot of times when people say like, hey, you're overwhelmed, you don't have time, you can't take a day off, things are falling through the cracks, go and hire an assistant to outsource to. And I spent a bunch of money on an assistant that was trying to manage my chaos, and it wasn't their fault, but I had chaos and I had a bunch of things in my business that I actually didn't even need to be spending time on. And so I actually have what I call the ROAD method that I take my clients through, and it's called ROAD, ROAD, remove, optimize, automate, delegate. And delegate's fourth on purpose. Is a lot of times we delegate our chaos. We delegate, tasks, and then those tasks get done and people aren't becoming proactive to actually take things off of your plate and you become the bottleneck. And so remove is always first for me. Before you add in any new marketing thing, before you add in another thing to your business, there's probably things in your business you can remove. And that's really hard. But there's probably things that you've been investing time and energy on that you don't need to be. I know people who even remove their inbox. They get an autoresponder that says, I'm only in my inbox 2 days a week and I respond at this thing. And so instead of their focus constantly shifting on their emails all day long, it's not even delegating. They're literally putting an autoresponder in there that's saying, hey, I only do emails on this cadence. And so then they can show up and not have to do that and not have to feel behind and not have to feel like they're constantly shifting their focus to answer emails and respond to things.
No, I love that. Yeah. It's remove first, then delegate. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
And in terms of, so talking about your clients and your coaching, and what can you tell us a bit about how you help your clients specifically, and any sort of like testimonials or like breakthrough stories that really touched you?
Yeah. Well, I'll share one recently. I have a small group of CEO moms that I do group coaching with. And this one lady has 2 young kids at home, and she is running a 6-figure marketing agency, has 10 employees, and she was constantly like being mom and being CEO at the same time. like always. And she followed a lot of parenting coach advice that when your kids nap, that's when you should squeeze all the productivity out and focus on your most important things and get those done during nap time. And what she actually discovered is that nap time for her couldn't be a business activity. It needed to be a like soul giving, self fulfilling activity, because no other moment in her life did she have that clear boundary of just showing up as herself and feeding herself. And so she stopped working during nap time, which seems counterintuitive, but actually because of that, she was more focused during her work time, and she was more kind and patient and peaceful and giving during her parenting time. And so it was changing for her. And it seems like a small thing, like, oh, I stopped working during nap time. Sometimes I take a nap. Sometimes I read a book. Sometimes I scroll Netflix, and whatever it is. But she actually could be herself easier and show up better because she decided to do that. So that is one of those like little things. It's always just these little shifts that I found in people's lives to be able to do that. That changes things for you based off of who you are and the season that you're living in.
Yeah, the season that you're living in. That's a good point, important point. I think it's something that we often struggle to be aware of, I think, is that our life comes in cycles,
Yep.
and seasons, right? We kind of just see life as like a linear sort of timeline. It's like, okay, next step, next step, next step. But we actually become different people,
Yep.
along the way. When you're 29, you're going to be completely different to the 50-year-old version of yourself. And I think what some people get trapped in is the state of going nowhere fast. Like people like seem to be busy, and they think that they're running out of time, so they kind of move forward. But motion is obviously, misaligned with or misunderstood as progress.
Yeah.
The other way
Yeah.
around.
That's
But
so
yeah.
true. Yeah, and you're constantly evolving, right? And things are shifting. And I think we have this like, and I think it's part of our human nature, right? That there's like should be a solution that solves all problems. So we have this idea that like if I could just figure this out, then it's like done. That's not the way it works. Like something's going to happen, something's going to shift, something's going to change in your reality. Like for me, I really only work in 90-day cycles because that really is how my reality shows. There's summer, then there's start of school season. My kids have sports seasons. Like there's holidays, which is a whole different thing, right? And so everything has to shift based off of that, and it's constantly evolving. And so if we can get really clear on like the things that we're doing in our life and business that actually can still be flexed, right? When things don't go to plan, that can be shifted and changed, then it helps us be better and show up better and have an easier life and business because we're not constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. When you think that there's a solution that's once for all, you're always trying to reinvent the wheel. And there's not a reinventing of the wheel. There's knowing certain things and guarding those and protecting those and keeping those, even if the place where it happens changes or the time that it happens changes, or maybe even the person who does it changes, right? Like all of those things can evolve and change. But that one clarity piece is still there, right? Or that one structure that you need to keep going is still there.
Absolutely. So you've obviously talked a bit about balance, which is one of the main themes, and that it's often there is no balance. It's kind of just like we're just kind of constantly trying to adjust the scales, which is in a way kind of balancing it out. But I'd love to hear what your sort of take is on purpose, because we do talk about that a lot on the Wholesome Way, and how we integrate purpose into our lives in a way that allows us to live a life that we desire, that we can make money from, that we can be happy, that we can be fit and healthy, within our life, and that we have family, we have friends who support us, and that we actually enjoy doing what we do for work, and it gets us out of bed, and that sort of centers around the concept of ikigai, which I don't know if you've heard of that term. It's a Japanese term. Yeah, it's basically what I described, but in very rudimentary terms. But essentially integrating purpose into your work, into your life.
Yeah.
What is your view on fulfilling your life's purpose and how that integrates with work?
Yeah. My view is that there is no work without purpose, right? Like all of it is, but we have to find that purpose. So let me ask you this. Like a lot of times when people look at purpose, they think of values, right? And they say,
Yep.
what are your values? So what would you say are your values?
Well, my values right now are discipline, integrity, and compassion, and I wrote those every day. So everything that I do, all my actions, all my behaviors are based on those three values, and they lead into my purpose as well.
Yeah. So when you look at an action that you're doing in your life, how do you know that it's aligned with that value?
Good question. I would say I recognize an opportunity to display that value,
Hmm.
and I sort of know straight away in my head if that meets the value. So for example, so one of them is discipline. So if I set my alarm at 5 a.m., but I get up at 6 a.m., I know that I haven't met that value today.
Yeah,
If I, if I, one of them is compassion. If I, this is a very specific example, but if I'm on the soccer pitch and I manage to not yell something bad to someone on the
that's
pitch
awesome. Yeah.
while I'm playing, then I have ticked off compassion because I have, held back any sort of anger that doesn't need to come out. And I've ticked that box. So yeah, that's how I would say
Yeah.
it's sort of kind of like a mental tick. Like I know
Hmm.
it's kind of binary to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've just done the work that I do with my clients because the values are belief based, right? So a value of like faith or discipline or whatever, it's based in our beliefs, right? Which can be vague. They don't always translate to actual actions. I always try to shift it and say, what are your standards? So if your value is discipline, what are the standards, which is identity based, that means you're showing up in that discipline? So I heard you say, my standard is that I'm a person that wakes up, did you say 6 a.m., wakes up at 6 a.m. every day. And that translates into your discipline value. So, really, if you're clear on your standards, which is your identity base, it's much easier for you to show up and to know if you're actually aligned with your values and your
Mm,
standards than to not, because otherwise it's really vague. Generosity, being a generous person, could be super vague. That could mean a million different things. But for me, like my values family, one of my standards is to be a mom who's available from 4 p.m. on, because that's when my kids are out of school,
mm,
right? So that's the standard that I show up. And then I set up my boundaries based off of that, my non negotiables, which is, I close my laptop at 4 p.m. So all of that leads to knowing if you're winning at that or not. And they can be adjusted. You find out what works for you or what not, right? But when you are really clear on what your identity based standards are, who you want to show up as, it's much easier for you to recognize, like, in my business, is this something that I'm doing? Or how can I build this into my business or into my life in a more integrated way to make it really clear for you?
mm. I really like that actually. Yeah, standards because yeah, you're so right. And actually, when I think about it, I was taking through, I take people through the core value
Yeah.
exercise and then building that into their personal mission statement, which kind of sort of rounds it all out into like a memorable sort of phrase that you can tell yourself every single day. But yeah, I never thought about the standards part because, as you said, all these values like family and faith and integrity, like they're all very they're very big words, and I think
Yep.
people like the sound of them, but they don't know why they like the sound of them and why that's important to them. So yeah, I
Hmm.
think that's such a yeah, a golden nugget, I should say. Yeah.
Love it.
Fantastic. Um, yeah, well, what in terms of um the road forward, what are you most excited about in everything that you're doing with profit and presence, your clients, your family? Yeah, what's
Yeah.
happening for you in the future?
Yeah. Well, I think right now I really am geeking out on the whole AI stuff. I think that's kind of a cliche thing right now, but because I'm all about, productivity and efficiency and doing things easier, I found that there's so much more that could be done easier with AI if we're doing it the right way. And so it's been really cool to kind of dig into that and experiment with that and have that be a testing ground for my life and my business. My kids call it my boyfriend. Claude, my boyfriend, as I'm always asking him things, because then I don't have to research or look on Google or whatever and dig into things. But finding a way that it works for you. So like voice transcriptions work for me on that. I am very high on discernment in Working Genius. And so I can make decisions. I don't want Claude making decisions for me, but I really want it to help distill thoughts for me. So I would like for it to take stuff, build the context, distill the thoughts, and then I can make a decision based off of that, right? And so just recognizing like how you're wired and built and how you can build that into your life, into your day-to-day productivity and availability and opportunities. And of course, I don't think AI is going to take over people and their jobs. Like there's so much humanness that needs to happen still in our businesses and in our lives. But yeah, I'm really loving that right now. And then I think the other thing is just loving to see how culture has changed across the board for the possibilities to just build whatever freedom and lifestyle you want. Like that's just been so cool for me to see. When I graduated high school, it was like you could go into the military or you could go into the trades or you could go to college. There really wasn't a whole lot of like, you actually could just work for yourself and grow a business and build wealth on your own and, all of this stuff and have freedom and flexibility. My parents just retired and they're now retired millionaires, but they spent how many years doing that? Like living a life of, sacrifice and holding back and all of these things so that now they can spend it for the last 10 years of their life or whatever that adds up being, like that's just not the life that I want. And so it's really exciting to see how people have like kind of flipped that and see that and are recognizing that. And it's not out of greed, but it's really out of like, hey, we have one life to live. And this is the life we want to live, and we want to make that difference in the people that are closest to us. So that's been really cool for me to kind of see and be a part of, and an opportunity to guide people through with that.
Yeah, amazing. I love that positive outlook on the whole technology and using technology to create the life that you live, that you want to live. And I think it's an important point that I've I definitely awakened myself to, is that life is an open world game. And I think we really do forget that sometimes. Like we sort of think that we live in this this boundary, based on, like we talked about, belief system. A lot of that is based on the belief system, and it can be changed at any time. So I love that line.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. That's the crazy thing, is like, oh, people told me to do this. No, you can do whatever the stink you want to do. It might not always be a success, but you can do whatever you want, and you have the opportunity to work that out. I guess there's probably people who are devil's advocates that would be like, well, you can't go and murder someone or whatever it is, but within reason, you can do whatever you want.
You just got to collect the data, right? As you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Try, experiment. Oh, okay. That I got negative feedback from that one.
Went to jail for that one. Yeah.
Okay, don't do that anymore. And that's why we have rules in society, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Fantastic, Lauren. I love that outlook. It's very inspiring to hear that, and I think a lot of people will have a lot of hope from what you've said today. So really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Well, I always have some bonus wrap-up questions I like to ask my guests, if she's still got some time.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. So number one, what is your number one guilty pleasure?
Oh, my number one guilty pleasure. I feel like it changes all the time, but for me right now, it's naps. I do not get very good sleep at night. So naps is probably my guilty pleasure, which is hard to admit because people are like, grown adults taking naps. But yeah, that's it for me.
I totally agree with the naps thing. It's definitely very effective. Like even if it's 20 minutes, it can really give you a lot of energy. So yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Number two, what is the number one book that changed your life?
Oh, okay. Atomic Habits, I would say. I read that about every year. There's something new that I get out of it. I don't agree with all of it 100%, but I do think that there's so much that we can build along micro stacking and like just getting better at the natural things and natural rhythms in our life and the rituals that we place in there. So yeah, I would say if you haven't read Atomic Habits, go and read it, or listen to it on audiobook. It counts just as reading, which is what I usually do.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm a big fan of that book too. Yeah, it changed a lot of my life. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And number three, we've talked about your experience, your past, your journey, but what is the number one or the greatest life lesson that you've learned to date?
Ooh, greatest life lesson. That is a hard question. Let me think. Greatest life lesson that I've learned to date is probably that I am always going to mess it up. So I have opportunity to grow, and I just it's what I do afterwards and what I do with that changes, how I move forward. So I think when I was like in my 20s, I thought I had it all together. Like, yeah, I know this stuff and I'm good and I got it all together. And now I've learned from a lot of that foolishness, right? But I've also learned that with maturity, we just recognize that we're not always going to hit it 100%. We're not always going to do everything we need to do or we set out to do, but it's what we do with those opportunities when we get knocked down that really changes the trajectory of our life, and how we show up.
Great stuff. I love it. And finally, where can our lovely Wholesome Wayfinders follow you and reach out to you on your journey?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I have a YouTube channel, Profit and Presence Co., or you can go to my website, profitandpresence.com. But if you're in this place and you're just like, I don't know what the next step is to be able to build profit and presence into my life, then take my free diagnostic, profitandpresence.com/diagnostic. It takes about 5 minutes, and it will give you the one thing to do next so that life and business gets easier for you.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Lauren. Well, those
Yeah.
those links will be in the show notes in the description. So yeah, if you're interested, please reach out to Lauren. Take that diagnostic test if anything has resonated with you today. And yeah, Lauren, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, and your take on purpose. I think there's a lot of golden nuggets there to take away for the listeners today. So thank you so much. And yeah, we'll definitely keep in touch.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Amazing. Cool. Well, that's another episode of The Wholesome Way. Please rate the show if you haven't already. Share this episode with anyone that you think might find it useful. And obviously, as I mentioned, reach out to Lauren and explore her content and if anything resonated with you. But for now, stay wholesome.